Hello.
Hi. Sorry.
Mid crisps.
Yeah.
We've been moving. We're trying to find the right place to move out of the smoke. It's quite a clear day, but a little windy
And cold.
and fresh. Let's say fresh.
4
not
degrees.
cold. 4 degrees.
4 degrees. Yeah.
Crikey.
Winter now.
In Celsius, this is.
Yeah.
People from other countries.
Yeah. Yeah, proper winter now. So
And then there'll be people from other countries.
what's that?
But, well, being like 4 degrees is not cold.
Yeah.
People in Canada listening, going, yeah, let me know when it's really cold.
Yeah, minus 40.
Show your face. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're not here to talk about cold. We're here to talk about. We can go straight into it. It's not
Rain.
going to be a waffle day. Rain.
Rain.
Talking about rain.
There's been a lot of rain. There is going to be more rain.
It's because we live in Britain.
Yep. Yep.
It is my constant little like conversational tidbit with people where I'm like, I still don't understand that we live in this country with an inclement. Is it inclement climate, and yet almost everybody is still somehow incredulous that it is raining, as if it didn't rain last year or the year before that or the year before. You know, it's just an odd thing that. Well, I think the sort of stereotype, isn't it? It's like somewhere like Sweden can cope with 4 foot of snowfall a night, and we have 3 snowflakes, and the whole rail system shuts down. But it's because we're not used to it. But we should be used to rain. Surely we should be used to rain by now.
Yes.
It's wet here. That's why we've got good arable land, and the Vikings wanted it, and the French wanted it, and everything else, because Britain is arable. That's
Moist.
We are a moist country, and I know that's going to set some people off.
Yeah. Sorry.
Right.
Somebody on one of the Forest School support groups on the old Facebook was having a moment that I'm sure we've all felt, going, I know Forest School is supposed to be like all weathers apart from dangerously high winds, but about to work with tiny children, and the weather just looks so awful, and are they going to be prepared, and is it going to be horrible, and are they going to hate it, and what shall I do, and we've all been there and all had that moment of like really like looking out the window in the morning and just going and imagining the worst and going, what can I do to make this easier on everybody, because I know in my heart of hearts I probably should just plough ahead, but maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should cancel, because you know it is supposed to be fun and this is just not going to be fun. And so that post, I sort of, my heart went out to that person, and I thought, yeah, we have all been there. So I thought maybe we'd talk about some of our bad times and good times about working
as they relate to rain
and challenging times because of that.
I've kind of broadened mine out to like wet weather.
Okay.
Because I've kind of included not just the rain, but kind of the fallout from after the rain.
Yeah, mud.
Yeah, so we've made some notes. I'm going to get straight in.
Bad times or good times?
It's kind of, I phrase mine as a mistake.
Okay.
And it's a mistake that I have made. It's a mistake that other people have definitely made. And then it's one that I think the Forest School community can do more to challenge, which is this idea of like, just get them out. Just take them out. And that's why, I mean, it's broadened it, because I was thinking about wet mud as well as physically, you know, it is currently raining. And I think there is something to be said for that, like, I don't know, I was going to get very patriotic and just say like a bulldog mentality of like, you know, like we'll get out there and we'll fight them on the, but like, you know, that kind of headstrong, let's just deal with it. But then there's also a side where I think, but you're not, the flip is kind of like we need to meet them where they are, and there's so many factors that can play on it that it shouldn't just be a consideration of like how rainy is it, because if you factor it, and this is something I've done where I've kind of run sessions and gone, we're just going to go out anyway, whereas actually I should have taken into account how well are the children equipped in terms of clothing, how well are they equipped in terms of perseverance socially and emotionally, how well are they equipped in terms of touching back on Nick Elvey's blog about class and
Yeah.
we've talked before about
income,
it being,
you know, it's all very
income
well
and
going,
being
oh, how come these kids don't bring their equipment and
Yeah.
la 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 la, and go and getting all shirty about it and going, how am I supposed to deliver Good Forest School if they're not going to bring the right equipment? It's like, actually, you don't know what's going on at home. And
Exactly, and so
Yeah.
factoring that in and saying like, right, you know, we can all go, oh, kids are wiped clean and they'll warm back up when they get in the classroom, and you go, right, but if your 2-hour session knock on is that they have like no school uniform for the next day, or
Yeah.
that they've ruined school
Yeah,
shoes
and-
that mum can't afford,
yeah.
dad can't afford, like those are things that that mentality of like just get them out there
yeah.
is lacking.
Well, you've got to. It's about the long journey as well, isn't it? It's about
Yes.
going. Well, yeah, you might go. Oh, yeah, today they just really need to go outside. But if you're impacting on their longer journey of Forest School and well-being and development in a negative way by giving them a really terrible experience in the rain,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, then that is not beneficial in the long game.
And it might not be the experience that they have in your session. It might be the experience that they feel afterwards,
Yeah,
or when they
yeah.
get home,
Yeah, the
or
repercussions
you know, those
with-
things
yeah,
that knock
yeah.
on that we need to be considering when we
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
is my session right to run? Now, there's a difference between us running a session here in our woodland with even so versus on a school, in that we're self-employed and we work for ourselves and stuff. And I was remembering we've had some sessions that have been either so windy or so rainy or so cold that we have made the call almost for people that we go, look, we'll still run the session, and then half an hour in or 45 minutes in, we all just go, everybody's shivering, we've all done really well,
Yeah.
let's just call it a day.
Yeah.
And in a toddler group, that's very easy to do, and to kind of talk to parents and go, "Look, how are you feeling? Do you want to just call it today, and we'll come back tomorrow and do all this stuff?"
And you should be able to do that in a school as well. And
You should.
good schools will understand. I've worked in schools and had. You might want to. I've been in a very, very rainy session where most of the kids have just gone, I just can't cope with this now, and they've gone in, and there's been a member of staff, luckily, fortunately for me, there's been somebody available to be in the library with them while they did some
Yeah.
reading and did some like crafts and stuff. But those kids that really were enjoying being out in the elements and were up for it and wanted to carry on, I was able to stay out with them,
Uh-huh.
and it ended up being like me and two other kids at the end of it, and they were older, they were like 10, 11. And those two kids got an amazing amount out of it, and it was the right call for those other kids to be allowed inside, and both me and the school made that call together, and luckily that was able to happen. I want to go back to that point you said about like deciding whether a session is right to run for
Yep.
all those reasons, and you can kind of look at it, I guess, also in terms of like mediating. You can view that as risk, right? So I'm kind of
absolutely.
interested in this
Yeah.
idea of risk not just being using tools, using fire, climbing trees, it actually being about confronting situations that are difficult emotionally or physically because of the elements
Or
around you.
socially, or,
Like maybe you have never experienced squelching through mud and it feels really weird to you. That is still risk to do it and go through that experience because it's new to you and it's alien and it's a bit scary. And so in order to, like you say, meet them where they are, the ideal scenario would be that you can run the session, but you as an experienced or thoughtful leader have enough in your arsenal to mediate the risk, tailor the risk for the individual and make the session accessible for them. So whether that be, like you say, calling it short or saying you don't have to come out, or whether it be making sure that you've got a hot drink like ready. So working in schools again, I would not rely, if it's going to be a really bad day, I wouldn't rely on a fire to boil some water for those days. And you think,
yeah.
oh, maybe I'm being a bit of a wimp here. Like I'm Forest School, I should
It's
be lighting a
cheating.
fire. It's
It's
cheating.
cheating.
It's cheating.
It's not.
It's like it isn't cheating. They're going to need a hot drink whether or not the fire's going to work, and the fire isn't going to work probably, maybe because it's so wet and all the rest of it. So just bring a thermos already
And-
with boiling water and make sure they have a hot drink, or make sure you have a shelter which is accessible for them and you use it, and all these little things like
Yeah.
putting in measures to I'm going to call it mediating the risk, because
It is, and I think
It
it
doesn't seem
also
like a
it's
restriction,
factoring
but
in the most valuable use of your pre-session time as opposed to your in-session time. So if like this is the thing that gets me about like it's cheating if you have boiled water or whatever. But you go, if I'm trying to light a fire and in the rain on a, you know, in the middle of December, that is taking me out of the session because I've got to give more and more of my attention to that fire as it works less and less and it's harder and harder.
Yeah.
Whereas actually in that session, if you just had some boiled water ready that the kids could keep topping themselves up with, then you are much more valuable as a resource for emotional and perseverance support to be able to running around and go, that's great, and let's facilitate that. And they don't need a person sat next to a fire getting more and more frustrated. What they need is you, chivying them on.
And then there's nothing to say that you can't then light the fire. You've got that boiled water. But if they decide, like, we want the challenge of lighting a fire in the rain to see what that feels like, then of course you can still do that. I just feel like... And there's quite a lot of discussions about like how much kit you bring for a session, aren't there? We've talked about that before, and people talk about always like, oh, what do you averagely take to a session? And I do feel like when it's weather like that, you need all of the kit that you can in terms of well-being. So you need to invest in enough cups for every kid to have a cup. You need to buy the hot chocolate or the warm squash or whatever your group want. You need to have all of those resources ready. And there's loads of discussions as well about schools which have to or choose to provide their own kit for the kids, and which is the best kit to buy. We have here a big bag of clothes that have either been donated or like our kids have outgrown and stuff, don't we? Yeah. And we haven't. Well, actually, I was going to say we haven't used it recently, but we used it today. Like a kid came, needed a hat. He was very upset, and Mum was a bit like, "Oh, he's just in a really terrible mood." And I was like, "Do you want to borrow a hat?" Because I'd be in a terrible mood if I was in this wind without my hat. And then he perked up, didn't he, once he started wearing it? So that's another thing that you just kind of need to have. That's, for me, that's kind of not a negotiable. Like, it's more hassle for you to unload that stuff from your car or to go to charity shops and find that stuff or get it somehow. But if you want to do good forest school that meets them where they are, you just need that stuff.
And I think if we're talking about clothing, the other things that I think is important for people to feel like they've got some sort of gravitas with is, I have run sessions in schools and it's been an unpopular decision, but if the option is there for the children to go back in as they need, that's great. But if it's like you're going to send all these kids out and there's nowhere else for them to go, I have said to some schools and some teachers, that child can't come out in what they're wearing because within 15 minutes that child will be at risk of hypothermia. So, you know, and you should be able to say, just as you would in any other scenario, what that child is doing is not safe. And to go, and I appreciate, you know, if you've got the bag of clothing, then you can say, I've got this, if they put this on, then I'm happy that they can come out to the session, or if they do this, but that some people kind of go, they might feel maybe that however the children arrive, they've got to take them and then deal with that. Actually, you should be able to say, no, that isn't safe in my session. I can't, you know, you are going to do yourself long-lasting damage if if your circulation goes down and if you end up getting that was on my kind of illness. That
was on my bad times list. So I had like 3 things relating to that in terms of like leggings, like aren't leggings wonderful? They like move with you, they're really comfortable,
I love mine.
They're really great. But then when kids are wearing just leggings, like that happens so often, and when they get wet, like it's worse than being naked because they're just saturated.
They're wicking heat. They wick heat away from you.
And the slightest wind blows, and you are at risk of exposure. You know, and the only time I have in Britain had any kind of experience like that personally is when I was doing the Two Moors Way when I was about 15, and I just had the like really rubbish kit that I'd been lent by people. I didn't have any walking boots, so I had just like some boots, kind of Timberland style but cheap from the Armour Surplus shop. So really heavy and not waterproof. I had a really rubbishy cagoule, no waterproof trousers, and just normal clothes. Because I didn't have a lot of money to invest in that equipment. I didn't know about what the right equipment was, so that's just what I had. And it wasn't that cold. It was summer. It was August, but we were walking across, and it wasn't even the like really exposed bit of Exmoor. It was a bit more where the villages are, and a bit of road walking.
That can be worse though.
Country.
Sometimes it channels the wind, doesn't it?
So we were just walking, and I was just wet. Like my feet were soaking. Every bit of me was completely soaking. I was carrying a heavy pack, and it was about like day 5 out of 7. And I did get poorly. I was all right. I didn't have to go to hospital or anything, but I was sitting on like a tumble dryer in this place at the campsite where we got to in the end, just shaking, couldn't really talk. I went really like into myself. Because
the tumble dryer was on?
Do you know what I mean? Like if that situation carried on, then I can see how that would have led to hypothermia. And that was just from being wet. Like, it wasn't even wintertime. And that kind of hit home for me how dangerous it can be just to be in wet clothing, and especially for kids where they might not be as aware of what's going on in their bodies. So you see that with really little children often, where they're like, I'm fine, I don't want to wear the gloves, or I don't want to wear the hat, I don't want to, and they're playing and they're playing and they're playing and they're fine, and then suddenly they crash because they haven't had those messages from their senses to tell their brain, no, this isn't right, I need to change, and that can also be really dangerous. So that's a tricky thing, isn't it, when kids won't wear the appropriate stuff for other sensory reasons, or just because they've decided they don't want to that day. That's really challenging. And I don't really have any suggestions.
Well, I think the answer for that situation, I think, varies between, if you're in a toddler group, you can obviously suggest to the parent and pass that onus on and say, I don't think that, I think, as I did to a parent today, I just went, his hands are kind of red. Do you want a pair of gloves, or have you got a pair of gloves, or whatever? If you're in a school, I think you then have to pass that back on to the school, and you need to say, this isn't going to be safe in the it's, I think, if you were out doing sessions in a bit of woodland and you knew no parents were going to be there to pick up in a couple of hours, I think that is a tricky situation. But again, you might need to do something where, as the children arrive, you're just doing a little mental assessment before their parents leave and sometimes that can be hard because particularly here, the wind can make the weather change quite a lot, and quite often for like holiday clubs, as parents have dropped off, it's been quite a nice sunny morning, and I have just said to them, it is due to tip it down at 1 this afternoon. Can I just check, have they got waterproofs, and will they be okay putting them on, or do they need, have they got spare boots or whatever? Whatever my kind of assessment is, that's what they need today. And if they haven't got it, to have the kind of it's not dignity, is it? It's kind of the like I'm not sure what the word is, but the kind of the sense and the confidence to say, I'm really sorry, I'll give you a refund or whatever it is, but that child will be ill if they come today.
And we have had, do you remember in home ed session, we had a child who did get incredibly cold, and that wasn't about refusing to wear the right kit, that was also about refusing to do the activities that were necessary. So that's the other thing, it's about sensing that you need to do some active stuff, whether that is playing a running around game or chopping some firewood or doing something that's physically active, when children often have the reverse inclination. They're going, I don't feel quite right, I'm feeling cold.
Not just children, parents quite often will come and sit round our fire circle, and our fire circle is, we're sitting in front of it now, I would estimate 2 metres from the fire to the bench. I don't know in what theory they think that a 2 metre away fire will do anything to warm them.
But there's also that thing which I was told on training about not using the fire for warmth, which I think was a really good point, and it's one that if you were just an adult coming to a session without forest school training, you might not necessarily be aware of, that it might be there for that hugger feeling and that feeling of like, oh, we've got the fire and it's there and it's really nice to look at and it makes me feel warm. But if you are using the fire as your sole source of heat on a cold day, then you're going to end up with accidents because people are huddling around it, they're far too close to it. You want somebody to be appropriately dressed and engaged in the appropriate activity, that they are warm enough without having to stand 2 feet from the fire and just staying there, because that is not sustainable. But often then, you will feel better if you run around and let's play this game, let's do it, and you're full of energy and enthusiasm. They're just like, no, this is horrible. I just want to sit still and maybe have like a cuddle from my caregiver, which is like going to sustain you for a bit, but actually, and it was a 12-year-old boy, wasn't it? That and it falls into your first aid. He just got so cold.
One of the things we did on my first aid training was spotting signs of hypothermia, and it's a change of personality, or it's slowing down or something else that you might assess that as, oh, they're not engaged in my session, or they're not involved in the activity, but actually that is a legitimate first aid symptom, just as much as like blood on the finger is. And then I think that feeds into one of the things that I thought was a mistake and has become kind of a success, if you like, was that after a few years we've now worked on having some permanent sort of shelters that are so we've got a big parachute over the fire pit, but we've also got like a freestanding kitchen with quite a heavy tarp on it and some walls that block all the wind out. It's not a building, it's kind of, they're what are they called? Like willow hurdles.
Yeah.
But they cut out all of the wind so that we've got a wind-free space with a roof on it. And we have had some sessions where, I mean, if you want to look through our videos on Facebook, it won't take you long to find it. There is one of absolutely like
Torrential.
cinema level, you know, like you could have gone outside and done a heroic speech level of rain, and being able to sit in there with a Frontier stove on, so the chimney's going out and the smoke's not staying in, was a real success. And I think that ties into what you're saying about having thinking not just like are they dressed for it, but kind of it's another level of like, right, we had some children on that day who, if we'd said, right, let's all do some star jumps, let's run around, would have sat very still and gone, no,
Yeah.
I don't really want to. So then you've got to mediate for that, and go, or mediate or mitigate, whatever the word is, and go, right, if you're not going to move, I need to
Yeah.
make you a shelter
Yeah.
that you know that you can stay in, and having a few shelters that are out of the wind and out of the rain for children that you can't G up into
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
The word is mitigate. I was saying mediate loads last time. That's
Okay.
a different word, isn't it? It is mitigate. Mitigating the risk,
mitigating
not
against
mediating
it.
the risk. That's
Yeah.
something different.
You know, I think that is a thing that people sometimes overlook, is that element that like getting wet is one thing, but getting wet and then the wind making you cold.
Yeah.
So having a space that even if the kids do jump in some puddles, that they can then come into that space, be out of the wind,
Yeah.
and kind of regenerate from there. So I see lots of setups on Instagram or Facebook and things where it's a big tarp, and they go, oh, getting ready for the rain, torrential rain today, and I kind of want to go, yeah, you need some walls or hopefully some or tarps on an angle so that you can be behind them.
Can I talk about a bad time?
Yes, please do. Talk about the bad time.
So I was working in a school playing field, basically flat, few trees around the edge, and there was no permanent shelter at all. And so I built my tarp shelter in the middle of the field, and I knew it was going to absolutely shed it down, and had tarps on the floor because it had been raining for a long time, so the floor was really muddy as well. And and I was like, I think I've planned my session pretty well, I think I know what I'm doing, it's all fine. And then the class were reception and year 1 children, and considering it's in a school, and if it's even drizzling, it's wet play, we're staying indoors. So for them, going outside in their school, on their school premises in the rain, was itself the most exciting and crazy thing ever. So they came out with that expected level of just like, ah! They literally came out at that level. I was like, okay, everyone, go back into school for 1 second. Go back into school. I need to tell you about the tarp shelter I've made. Here is the top shelter. It needs to be big enough for like 30 of you. So it's a flat school field. I've tied like one side of it to the fence, but the other side it's got some poles, like top poles that come with the set, and you've tent pegged them, made guy ropes and stuff. It's like we're going to use the shelter. We're going to start there, but if we pull on the shelter, it is just going to collapse. So can we do that? Can we all not pull on the shelter? Yeah. Okay, off we go. Ah! Pulling the shelter down, like poles smacking kids on the head, like just horrendous. Okay, we're going to try that again. Right, we can't do that because we're not going to have anywhere to shelter, and blah, 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 blah. They just could not do it. They were so hyper, and that was the only shelter. And after that session, as I reported back to the school, some parents very, very kindly volunteered their time to then put a permanent shelter over this kind of seating area,
right,
and built it and properly felted the top of it and stuff. So we had a place that was solid, because there was no way, you couldn't expect behaviourally those 4, 5, 6-year-olds to be like, okay, that's fine, we're outside in the rain and it's really muddy and slidey, and we will sit respectfully in your tarp shelter that you have spent 30 minutes
it's new. It's new and it's fun and exciting.
That was just like, oh, where do I go from here? I can't actually really remember.
What did you do in the session after they pulled it down?
I'm trying to remember, because that memory of the shelter just being like,
does it then come up and just says footage not found? Trauma.
Basically, yes. I can remember what the shelter looked like on the ground, and I can remember the children kind of tunnelling under it and collecting water on it and then flicking the water off and doing all that kind of stuff.
Sounds like great fun.
Yeah, it was really fun, and nobody got hypothermia or exposure. It was all fine, but it was that kind of like, I was really hoping it was going to be fine. Oh, it wasn't fine. My expectations were way out of line. But you know, what else could I have done at that time? Like, I tried.
Sometimes you have to have those
best.
horrible experiences.
You do.
Though, because that then, you know, partly
It's a learning experience.
It's a learning experience, and partly it steels you against kind of like next time you go out and some kids are a bit like that. It's almost a bit of a this is nothing, right? I've had X, or I've had, you know, whatever, and that does tie quite nicely into one of the things that I wrote, which is not just the physical considerations for the people, but the physical considerations for your site. So I'm not saying you shouldn't run a session on your site if it's raining, because there'll be erosion or there'll be whatever, but it's something that you need to factor in.
Definitely.
And something that you need to factor in even more so if you're working on a school site, because you are not there.
Trash it.
You know, even if it's like you know, oh, this is the Forest School area and they only use it for your Forest School sessions. If you have 2-hour session unfettered in the rain, you could absolutely destroy your Forest School space for the next year, for the next 2 years. You know, you can really do some stuff like that, and just thinking about, so that's one of the considerations. And then considerations that I have here in our woodland is that we've got as we use paths rather than rotating the site. We have quite clear paths that we use and whatever else, but that does mean that tree roots in those paths get more and more exposed. And so when it's raining, although I want to do running games, I'm also factoring in those are going to be some tree roots sticking up. One, they might trip over them,
slippery.
and two, they're so slippery. And you know,
and it's damaging the trees, which is then making them another risk because they're ill because you've been trampling their roots for months and it's whatever.
And again, let's get the caveat. I'm not saying you shouldn't go in the woods when it's raining.
But
not
that is
at all.
another thing that gets a lot of discussion on support groups, is like, how do you deal with mud on your site? And our answer has been wood chip donated by very friendly local tree surgeons, and I definitely recommend that to everybody. As you know, if you haven't done that already, you will find somebody who knows somebody who is a tree surgeon, and whenever they fell stuff locally, they'll have a massive load of wood chip. So if you get them to deliver and then get a couple of volunteers to spread it around, and the kids love doing it as well. We did it today, didn't we? And the kids enjoyed. We called it putting the blankets on the trees and covering up their roots because it's cold and their roots become exposed, and it is a kind of never-ending task, but it's quite a fun one, and it keeps them warm too, so it is and that kind of solved our muddy path problem, didn't it? There's always someone putting up a funny photo of muddy tarps. You know, that whole horror of working in schools or working in a site where you have to take things away again. We are so lucky that we don't have to do that here, and that most stuff can either stay up or it can be put away in an outdoor storage area. Where
or just hang it up and let it rain on it.
It doesn't have to go in our cars. It doesn't have to be dragged in. It doesn't hang up to dry in our houses. Like, oh my lord, that is not a fun.
You are troopers, people that do all of that.
Hats off to you. It is not fun. I remember starting in schools. Do you remember when I made those sit mats out of old yoga mats?
You cut the kneeling mats and stuff.
So I got some really cheap kind of camping roll mats, and because again at the school at the time didn't have any sort of seating area at all, so I had to set up a tarp shelter and then have little sit mats. And first session I was like, oh, look at this, I'll take a photo of it, look at these little blue mats around in a circle, and there's my fireball, and it's all lovely. And then and I just hadn't, because I wasn't experienced, hadn't foreseen, the kids are not going to follow instructions about, we're just going to sit on the mats, we're not going to walk across them with our muddy boots. Oh no, they're not actually surfboards, we're not going to use them. I remember putting them into a bin bag and hosing them off in the garden, spending half a day hosing down these flipping mats both sides and then hanging them on the washing line, and then you just know it's going to happen immediately again. It's just oh lordy.
Do you know what this is slightly off topic, but it makes me think about something that irks me of the social media is photos of tough trays. And when they're set up all beautifully. And it's something deep inside me goes, but the kids are going to come in and what's the point? Show me it after they've used it. So, and I had the same kind of thing when I saw your picture of all the lovely. And you get the stuff. People still do at Forest School sites when they're like, look, we're set up for our toddler group, and I want to go, show me it 10 minutes after they've left. And that's what I want to see. I want to see, how did it work? What was it like?
Can you see the wren in the mud kitchen?
I can see a wren in the mud kitchen. Making some. No, it's the wind making the pans knock.
Yeah.
But yes,
there she is.
She's doing some cooking.
Hey Jenny.
She's getting ready.
Hey Jenny.
One of the other things I I'm still working on, and it's a fine line. Oh no, it's not a fine line. It's a spectrum, I guess, of prepping yourself for the rain, not just solely blinkery looking at the kids and going, right, what will they need and what will they do and whatever else, and actually thinking, however much of a job you have this as, I know some people listening do it one afternoon a week, some people just wish they could do it, and some people, and then we're at the other end of the spectrum where we're in 5 days a week doing this, and so the level of gear that you buy yourself varies, and I'm always torn between but looking at it and going, I do this 5 days a week, it's worth investing in good base layers, good whatever, and getting myself kitted out. But then on the other hand, I look at that and I go, well, if I'm absolutely kitted up to the nines, then when the kids get cold, I will struggle to empathise. Or not struggle to empathise, because I'll obviously get it that they're cold, but what I mean is that,
you won't notice.
I'll be quite content.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're wearing similar clothing to the children, you're more on a level ground.
I know what you're saying.
And that's really hard.
I know what you're saying, but I would always go with the
get your own gas mask first.
Yeah, definitely that, because then you are in a position to give. Because one of the things I was going to talk about was, I know that everyone has their own style of forest school leadership, and and not all of us are confident or enjoy things like singing and storytelling and all that kind of stuff. But when it is challenging conditions and rainy and cold, I kind of rely on that more, I'd say, and be ready to, especially like on a school field where you haven't got all those resources or haven't got like, oh hey, this is fun, let's all get really involved in this, when it's more, there's less stimulus, if you like, then at least if I get everybody together and we're all drinking a hot drink and we're going to sing a song together, or we're going to tell a story or whatever, it's that input that pays off.
And you think you need to be
I think so. I think
in a good place.
I think I can't imagine running a session without that up my sleeve if it's needed, if you see what I mean. Like it happened yesterday. I think.
What happened yesterday?
Yes,
it
happened yesterday. So yesterday it was forecast to be beautiful sunshine, a bit cold, but beautiful blue sky and sunshine all day. And then it started to rain.
Yeah, it did.
And then the kids were like, it's not actually rain, it is hail. Like, it is freezing. It's suddenly the wind came up, and out of nowhere there was this like very heavy, icy rainstorm. And so we all ducked into the kitchen and got a fire in the frontier stove really quickly. And then some children found that really difficult. They were like, well, why are we stopping? And I was just like really honest. I was like, well, I don't really want to be out in that right now. we were playing human skittles at the time. And it just came out of nowhere. I'm like, we're just kind of being here. And some children find that very hard. I was like, I can't be just, hiding in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But then spontaneously, you were like, we got to that part. We got to that story. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And then you launched into that, and that was the thing to do, and that was really nice, and it was funny, and it was a funny story, and they were laughing, and it was a real. I know I use the word hugger a lot, but I just think it's such a crucial part of forest school. It's part of that that just experience for me. I can't imagine forest school without storytelling and music and those moments of togetherness where you're sharing something in a very ancient way, and it's warming you from the inside, and it's boosting your morale, and it's taking your mind off of all the physical unpleasantness, and it's sharing something together in a really vital way. So if I would that's my personal take on that. And you have to have you have to be in a good place to be able to pull that out of the bag.
If you are cold or hungry or wet yourself, if you've wet yourself, it's really hard to run a session. Is my takeaway. No, but I do know what you mean. It's very difficult to. Sometimes I related it this morning to a parent about we talk about emotional bank accounts, and I kind of think that sometimes the rain is taken from your bank account, and then the wind is taken from your bank account, and then if storytelling sometimes can be quite a taxing thing, especially if you're. Sometimes storytelling feels like you're just rolling a ball down a hill, and sometimes it feels like you are pushing a log up a hill because you're just working against it. But
that happened to me the other day in kindergarten, where I started telling a story, and then no one was listening.
You just turned around to me and were like...
people were like tugging it was so good. I was like, okay, I'm taking off the storytelling hat. I'm just going to stop.
Yeah, you just got to abandon it.
And then you said something that made me go, oh no, I should carry on. I should try it again. So I just tried it again, and it did work in the end. But that was definitely
but if you
log up the
if
hill.
you
I was
have,
like,
you know,
"What?"
if your focus is on keeping yourself warm or something,
Yeah.
it's very hard to then be like, let me act this out or let me do
Yeah.
whatever. So I
Talk really loudly with a lot of big deep breaths, and it does expend a lot of energy if you're.
It does. And a lot of you know, it sort of feeds into that thing we sometimes talk about when you're storytelling of like you might change the story based on the sort of facial or physical feedback that you're getting from your audience. You know, are they laughing? Are they watching what you're doing? Are they doing whatever else? And it kind of ties into that, and just in terms of like, oh, have they stopped shivering maybe now, or are they no longer kind of itching to get going, or then, you know, they're not thinking about their wet boots for 10 minutes because you've taken them away somewhere else in the story.
Yeah. That's kind of what I mean. It's like, take them on an imaginative journey. I mean, it goes without saying, it's quite obvious, but a good thing about being out in weather like that and like surviving and being resilient and you know, you've made all of those calls about, are they wearing the right stuff, do I carry on, all that kind of shizzle. And then I just had a really good session with some kids in a primary school once where I think some parents were coming to pick up, and so were watching, maybe it was an after school club or something. And I remember the parents, just their faces, they were like approaching school, just like, oh, in the headlong wind and rain, and just looking like, oh. And then looking across at what we were up to, and we were doing tarp races where you're in two teams and kids are standing on one tarp, and then they've got another tarp they throw in front of them, get their whole team on the next tarp, pick up the one behind, to the end of the field in the driving rain and wind, and they were just like laughing their heads off, going, oh, come on, that kind of team spirit thing, and it being like, that was more fun because of the rain.
Yeah.
If that had just been a normal, sunny, calm day, that would have been like, there was a thing that we did. But
well, that kind of, my last note that I had was for more for people who have their own site, but also for people who sort of are setting up stuff. And I do think it's important to have play opportunities that are only available when it's raining. And one of the things that we have on our site is things like big muddy puddles, or, you know, we've got a big hole that's got like a stream that comes out of it, but if it's not raining, that stream is not full. And if it's not massively raining, then the mud kitchen is not full. And having things that, like, you can point to the, you know, sometimes the children are like, oh, there's not much water in the mud kitchen, and you can go, no, it hasn't rained for a little bit, has it? And if you're always providing water, then you're not giving them an opportunity to experience a positive response to rain. And so I think we've got to the point now where sometimes when it's raining and children turn up, I'm thinking, you know, older children on a Saturday or home ed groups, they kind of arrive, and because it's raining, they're like, we can do this today, and they come with, you know, we're going to go to the digging hole, or you know, we're going to go down the mud slide, and it's stuff that you go, you can't do that when it's not raining. That isn't there for you. And having them kind of like not miss it, but it's almost like if you put a board game in a glass cabinet and you went like, we're not getting that out today. You know, like you know, they might come back the following week and it won't be raining, and they're like, can we do mudslides again? You're like, well, no, because it's not raining. It's not. That's not the thing. And so that is, I think, if I want to leave it, I want to leave this sort of discussion on the positives of like, there are so many more play opportunities that exist in the rain, and not just play opportunities that are like despite the rain, play opportunities that actually work to the benefit of it being raining. And you might that might be a piece of advice as well if you're working on a school site or early on with a group, that it's a bit the flip side of what I was saying before about you need prep and kit about like hot drinks and cups and clothing, but you may actually need to do less, like not necessarily less planning, but more time for open-ended free play in your planning, because the environment will provide those opportunities naturally, and the children want to explore that, and that's what forest school is all about. All the physical sensations are different. You know, walking from A to B is very different in the rain as it is in, you know, the middle of a heat wave in summer. And it always strikes me as interesting how in the UK, in the early years curriculum, like pouring and moving materials is like a large component of the curriculum. And then you move into Key Stage 1 and there's some mentions of it, but not really. But then you get some 8-9-year-olds out in the rain, they want to pour stuff.
Yeah.
Pouring is an exciting
Yeah.
experience. And
I want to pour stuff.
And it's that mastery play, and it's that,
I'm 39.
mixing of potions and combining materials, and that stuff doesn't go away when they turn 5 or 6. It is still there,
Yeah.
and somehow the rain. We've talked before about forest school
yes.
being, it's sort of a leveler.
Yeah.
But the rain makes it okay to play down in a way that
Definitely.
your peers will not go, you're pouring to make a potion, we're going to go off and have a fag or something. But
I've just had an amazing memory of like year 6
Do
boys.
tell me.
I put on when we were writing our notes before this, it was like bad times, good times, and mud was in the middle, and it's in the middle for bad times for
yeah.
muddy tops and your site getting trashed and all the rest of it. But it's on the good because I just remembered where a group of year 6 boys who had always been a little bit like not necessarily
bit too cool for school.
Yeah, a little bit too cool for school. And it was just early on in my relationship with them where we just didn't have much connection yet. And they spent the whole session making the most intricate mud food and giving it all names. They were really like, they were made up words. I
Yep.
can't remember any of them now, but they were like kind of making balls of mud, and they all had these like alliterative weird new words that they'd conjured up, and they were selling them and they were making them, and then that evolved into a like throwing the mud ball at the target and it's splatting, and all this kind of stuff, and pancakes. And I was just so surprised that they would engage exactly as you're describing in that kind of play, which you might expect from younger children usually.
Well,
But actually what they were creating was so, you needed that manual dexterity.
Yeah.
There's no way a 5-year-old could have made what they were making. It was art, they were making these in crazy, and it was English because they were making up these words, and it was poetry,
Yeah.
and it was just a moment of loveliness.
Well, I think one of the things that has stuck with me, one of the sort of, when I became a dad, one of the things that my mum said to me was, always keep some of their toys that they stopped playing with about 6 months ago, because if they're ever ill, that's what they will go to. And I wonder if, again, sort of leaning on that bank account metaphor, if the rain is taking away some of your, you're focusing some of your energy on that, you can no longer operate at your highest social level or your highest physical level, and so as a result, the flow state moves down.
Maybe, yeah.
I wonder if there's something of, if you're focusing some of the energy on, right, I'm going to keep warm and do whatever,
Yeah.
you don't have the energy to negotiate, well, why is Sophie being a bit weird with me today? You just got to go down to like, right, let's make a kitchen, let's make mud, this is happy.
I do think there is something about like the physical sensation of it being a bit like mucky and filthy and and messy. Your expectations of everything, including yourself, are lowered, and so you're kind of like, let's just go for it. Like all of my ego is kind of gone a bit, and it becomes a bit of a show sometimes for some children. It's like, well, look how muddy I've got, and for some children that's the moment they kind of break out of their shell a little bit, and you see, oh gosh, they're really way more hardy than I thought, or funny than I thought, or whatever, because it's the moment they've drenched themselves, like the other day at Toddlers, in the puddles, or they've just gone, I don't care, I'm just going to spread mud on my face. Although on the bad times list has got to be like mud fights on school grounds. Oh, how the heck do you manage that? Because on the one hand you're like, this is so joyous, look at this, they're just engaged in nature and it's amazing. On the other hand you're like, oh god, these parents have to like clean these clothes, and hang on, that mud ball's got a rock in it, and all that stuff, and it's just.
Do you know what I have seen that is quite good? So I'll give some options for people, because somebody has just listened to that and gone, yes, that's my group. So options that I have seen that I think would work well are a completely vertical, so like a wall, clear tarp.
Yeah.
And children standing either side of it, so they can still see each other, and you can have games of walking around, and you can poke your tongue out and you can cane mud at it as hard as you possibly can, knowing that the other person isn't getting muddy. An extension from that, sometimes I have with groups made almost effigies, like wooden dummies, and gone, right, let's cane this, let's give it a name. Who is this? It's Jeffrey. All right, let's smash Jeffrey with mud and do whatever and channel it that way. Or just going, right, a bit like we were saying earlier of you need to be in the right clothes to come out in the rain. You need to be in the right clothes to have a mud fight. And so I sometimes have said, you are in an all-in-one, you know, a onesie waterproof thing. There is very little chance of any mud hitting you. So you can go and have a mud fight with anybody else that's in that thing. And then you kind of get into, well, there's stones in the mud. Okay, so can we take mud from a certain place so there's no stones? Or can we agree that if we...
Yeah, it's just like next level dynamic risk assessment, isn't it? In terms, because you might predict that they probably are going to do that today, and then they don't. Or it's the quiet ones that you think, oh, they'd never do that. Or it's the one wearing the, you know, pristine pink leggings, and, you know, you can never...
can I tell you a bad story?
Yeah.
It was my second ever forest school session.
Yeah.
And I was working in a school, and they had a non-uniform day.
Yeah.
I did not know it was non-uniform day because I was out on the field. So a group of children arrived for the forest school session in October.
Yeah.
And they were all in what I looked at, and I went, those are not school uniforms, those must be their forest school clothes.
Yeah.
Cue mudslides on their belly, you know, these are 6-year-olds, mudslides on their bellies, slapping it on the trees, literally caking their legs, doing the thing where you put mud on and then you scrape tattoos off so you can do whatever. Absolutely loved it. They were all head to toe in mud. Went back in. Next week, and the head came out and went, I think we might need to tone the mud down. I did have some complaints from a parent who'd sent their child in branded Disney dresses because it was non-uniform day and she hadn't got to, you know, so they hadn't told me it's non-uniform, this is their non-uniform. So I'd just gone, okay, I must not have seen that child, you know, particularly closely in order to go, why are you wearing a blue, you know, I don't know, Cinderella dress or whatever. So that was my kind of like, it was like getting a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, that always happens in mud though. You're always going to get that. You're going to get, even if they are in their forest school clothes, there's just conversation after conversation you have to be emotionally ready for with the school. And I guess it's maybe easier if you already work in the school as a member of staff, but if you're an outsider coming in, they're all, and I would say probably as a piece of advice, just preempt it all the time. Just have those conversations. There's nothing worse than it. Wait until the next week and them going, actually, the caretaker was spitting because they've traipsed the mud through the school, and so put that plan in, because they won't have thought of it, guaranteed. Like the staff, the head, the other, you know, the non-outdoors teachers will not necessarily have pictured absolute mud monster children who have been rubbing the mud in their hair as shampoo because they can, and they're just waiting. That's the other thing, isn't it? It's like, especially at the beginning of a forest school journey with some children, they're just like, oh, how far can I push this? At what point is someone going to tell me to stop? No one's telling me to stop. Oh my, okay. And so they will go past what, you know, some element of common sense might be telling them to do. They're past what you would do if you were out in the woods with your mate at the weekend. That's the thing, because it's in school and it is about boundary pushing, and then it's not necessarily like, I don't know, it's a tricky one, isn't it? And it's just keeping those channels of communication open with the school and going, okay, what do you want us the plan to be? Do you want them to do this? Are you going to hose them off outside? Have you got a place, especially in the rain, because it's like, well, they're going to take their outdoor kit off, but then it's going to get soaking, and you know, all those kind of
and also
things.
As well as preempting that with the school, preempt it by, and if I would recommend this, if you can, follow the class out to the gate at the end of the day and catch and talk to parents and try and find out from the school who are the parents that I need to talk, who's going to be the ones that I need to go and say, do you know what, this was incredible, he made a mud tower that's taller than his head, and you know, and preempt it with how positive it was, so that their immediate thing is how amazing it is.
It's worth washing all of this stuff for. It's really annoying for me and it's a real hassle, but it was worth it because they had a great time, rather than just their perception of it is not the same as yours. Yours is all like wonderful nature connection and development and stuff, and theirs is, holy Lord, they're seeing
errands, they're seeing jobs
with some dude or dude woman who's just let them
I often
be
think
insane.
of you as a dude woman.
I am a dude woman. And you know, what is this? And now I have to deal with the fallout. So that is good advice, definitely. But,
so cool.
It's
getting cold now.
Yeah.
Gonna call it now.
Home time.
Okay. Bye. If you're in the UK and you want to come down to Children of the Forest in person and do a little bit of training with us, we've got a load of dates on all the way through this next academic year.
If you go to our Facebook page or our website, you'll be able to see all the dates and the titles of the courses, and make sure you've got your ticket as soon as possible. They're all small groups so that we can do as much personalised learning as possible. In March, we've got a course on storytelling, music and drama. In April, a course in general outdoor learning involving a level 1 in forest school qualification. In May, we've got an outdoor cooking course, and in June, we've got an introduction to whittling. And if you feel like going for the big fish and you want to start your own forest school or become a qualified leader, in April this year we're starting our level 3 training courses. So you can come down to Children of the Forest for a whole week and spend some time with me and Gemma and learn how to run our very own forest school. So to find out all the dates and to get booked into those courses, go either to our Facebook page or to our website, which is childrenoftheforest.com.